10-game slate in front of us, which we're going to take you through all the relevant news and players you should be looking at. I'm Chris Spags, joined again today by one of the premier minds in NBA analysis in the world of daily fantasy, Mr. Fast Eddie Fair. How you doing, Eddie?
I'm doing very well. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm ready. You know, it's a day of redemption here. Obviously, yesterday we got some sharp tweets yesterday because Josh and I and Eddie in the chat, but it wasn't a full pick because you weren't on the show. We were not Team Fred VanVleet yesterday, and people really took that one near dear to their hearts. So it's got to be a bounce back day, Eddie, and you have to guide us to it. It's up to you.
I will do my best to cover for the team.
And another guy who was affected by stupid Fred VanVleet yesterday, he's available on Thrive Fantasy. Thrive Fantasy is a new DFS app where players draft a lineup built of prop bets of only top-tier athletes. You pick 10 props out of the 20, and the less probable a prop is to occur, the more points it's worth, and that's where the game theory lies. So go click this link. I'm going to drop in the YouTube chat right now. We are going to offer a special deposit bonus on Thrive Fantasy today with the promo code that's in there, $10 on any $10 deposit. $20 on a $100 deposit and $50 for $200 or more. So go check that out now. Eddie, give me your thoughts on Kyle Lowry. He is in the slate again. There's no Kawhi Leonard again. And Thrive has him at an over-under of 15.5 points. You get over, for the over, you get 95 points. For the under, you get 105. What would you do with Kyle Lowry there at a 15.5 point over-under?
Yeah, I'd go with the over still. He's someone I still like quite a bit in DFS tonight. Disappointing last night. And again, in full... being fully transparent here, the last couple times he was in the Sans Kawhi slate, he was looking dreadful for most of the slate, and then sort of caught up at the very end. So we've had a number of Kyle Lowry without Kawhi Leonard games, and there's been a couple times that he has just barely pulled it in with some crazy. In the Memphis game was particularly notable, where that game was blowing out badly. They ended up there was like a 30-point blowout in that game, and he, with like 30 seconds left in the third quarter, having played most of the third quarter, is going to be done for the game, and had like 26 fantasy points, and then went, I believe it was 3 steal, assist, steal, 2-pointer for like 10 fantasy points in the last 30 seconds to end up with like 35, 36. But was really close to being dreadful. Same thing this last game against Sacramento. So we are looking after a pretty massive earlier this year, and then the first 10 games without Kawhi, he averaged like 47 fantasy points. He hasn't come into that recently and salvaged to get 35, 36 fantasy points in those matchups. So it certainly seems like less of a windmill slam for me than it has in other spots. Probably priced best on FanDuel at 75, then on DK at 72, then finally on Yahoo at 32, where I think you're spending the most proportionately for him. I certainly don't have an issue going to Kyle Lowry. There's a massive ceiling there that we saw, a half dozen times out of the first 10 games without Kawhi this year, and but between that and a very difficult matchup with the Pacers, certainly not the just windmill slam him play he was for the first few months of this year. I mean, if you played Kyle Lowry every single time, every single lineup when Kawhi Leonard was out for all of calendar last year, and you profited extremely well. He never hurt you and minted you several times. So, on a very, very large slate, I still like him quite a bit, especially in tournaments where I do think there is a very real upside, and because of the recent, and again, I'm using struggles somewhat metaphorically. He ended up with 35 to 40 in all these games. You're going to get him at lower ownership. I still like him in tournaments, but far from the windmill slam he used to be because of the environment. All the guys on this team, from Fred VanVleet, who you previously alluded to, but Pascal and Serge would be the next two guys we would normally look at here, all become excellent tournament plays. I probably still prefer Lowry the most, then Ibaka, then Pascal. But it's more of a let's get one in there, especially there were a number of times earlier this year where it was, Kawhi Leonard is out. Lowry, Pascal, Ibaka, run it, and then fill in the rest of your lineup. And that worked pretty well for you. So, but I like them all. Anunoby still being out, sort of secures the minutes load for Pascal, which we're pretty good about. Serge Ibaka himself, just too cheap on Yahoo, rather, where he's just $22 still. That's well cheaper than, say, Pascal, so that's not a tough spot there. Although he does take what basically end up being one of your two center spots on Yahoo, where you have a center and a utility, but they have a DraftKings-esque inability to price centers correctly, so you pretty frequently end up taking two centers there if you're building your lineup correctly. But yeah, certainly an interesting spot. I think my average exposure to this game in a tournament lineup is a Raptor and no Pacers.
Yeah, I think that seems fair. And Lowry is an interesting play today. The ownership, as Eddie mentioned, is down quite a bit, according to our projections at Osmo.com. And I think there is certainly value going back to Lowry. We all saw last night, if you were playing him, I'm sure you were at least aware of it. He just stood in the corner and did the same thing like Eddie mentioned. He's been very lethargic his last couple starts, but division rival game, maybe that brings it out of him and you get him at lower ownership. Talk to me real quickly, Eddie, about Fred VanVleet. Obviously, I mentioned him up top, but he is one of the chalkier plays on the slate today on both sites. How comfortable are you feeling with him if he is going to be a top 5 owned guy?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to that when we do the halftime daddy leg segment when we get there. It is worth pointing out there are only 2 teams on the back end of a back-to-back here. Of everyone playing, and only one team on the front. The Pelicans play again tomorrow. That's it for teams on the front end of a back-to-back, and it is only the Raptors and the Clippers who played yesterday, so that's another thing to be concerned about. And Toronto is not going to the best matchup, dealing with the Pacers. So I think Fred VanVleet is fine. He's going to be appropriately owned if he ends up being in the mid-20s or something like that. His price on really all 3 of the main sites we talk about is still demonstrably a little bit too cheap. Drink for the demonstrably game. But 4,600, which is what I think he is on both of them. That's like droppable on FanDuel if it goes awry in certain lineup construction. So FanDuel, excellent. 15 on Yahoo, still excellent. DK, the worst of the 3, I suppose, and still very much in play. Although on a 10-game slate, in a tough matchup where you're dealing with a team that has multiple good, guard and wing defenders, probably most inclined to get away there of the 3 sites. But by all means, get yourself some Fred if it works for you. But yesterday was obviously a much better matchup, and that really can't be overstated. You could make an argument Indiana is the worst matchup. It's probably second for me, but Sacramento would have been one of the top 2 or 3. Although one of the things that didn't get discussed on the show yesterday as much as maybe it should have was the fact that they are playing a lot slower. If you look at the Kings this month versus say last month, and seems worth
I did mention that because the unpredictable numbers jump out for the shot clock numbers, whereas like ESPN's pace numbers haven't quite caught up to that yet.
Yep, that seems right.
Let's talk about the Celtics, Eddie. Obviously, there's a lot of injury news there with both Kyrie Irving and Al Horford ruled out for rest today. Terry Rozier expected to be one of the most popular plays on the slate today. Also, some good ownership expected on Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. A lot of the pieces there. Aaron Baines as well should pick up a couple of eyes. How are you feeling about the Celtics side here in a game where they're still favored by quite a bit of points that would indicate a blowout coming, but we don't, can't project blowouts necessarily, I guess.
Yeah, we'll go there. I want to mention that we just got news that Nene is going to rest and Kenneth Faried is going to start. That makes me like Kenneth Faried a lot. The matchup is exceptional. I had some concerns with him today. Obviously, the prices come up where you're paying, 5 and 4.4, what have you, for Kenneth Faried. So I had some concerns, but moving past that, Nene was in some pretty significant foul trouble and saw limited minutes relative. So I wasn't sure if you were going to get expanded minutes out of Faried tonight. It was possible. Obviously, that game was a blowout, and so he only played in the mid-20s. I thought there was a chance that tonight you maybe, got up to 30. Now I think it's a probability that you get some number of minutes out of Kenneth Faried in an excellent matchup with the next 30. So Yahoo, where he's, I believe, $10. I think he's still sitting on the floor there, which makes sense. FanDuel and DraftKings have reacted to bump him, but not enough. He's still, I like Kenneth Faried quite a bit now. And number of guys in that game, obviously James Harden, and certainly Enes Kanter, price dependent on site, but $5K on DraftKings and 19 on Yahoo make plenty of sense there. As far as the Celtics go, yeah, it's tough for me to differentiate between which of these guys I like the most, but I like a lot of them quite a bit. We actually had a game earlier this year. They played the Cavs, I think, twice in the preseason. They played them again once earlier this year with Horford out, and unsurprisingly, the Celtics crushed them. And in that crushing, you got a big game out of Kyrie. Now you have Kyrie out as well. I like. It's very difficult for you to name a player on the Celtics I'm not going to like in a tournament. And some of these guys will be good. You want some Celtics. Gordon Hayward we'll start with just because it's the most polarizing one. We had a couple games with Kyrie out in a row. And a couple games against Minnesota, which apparently was a thing for him. It's not a thing for him. It's just random. But where he put up some monster numbers. And it really looked like with Kyrie out, he was going to handle the ball more and do a lot. And then we had Kyrie out again. We thought, oh, this is a great matchup. And he literally just watched the game. It was against Nets, I think. And he just literally walked up the court and stood by the three-point line 75 times in a row. First half had 15 minutes and 5 fantasy points. It was a depressingly pedestrian, not involved performance by Gordon Hayward in that game. So that's obviously possible. This also a just brilliant matchup. But I understand concern. So I think he's an elite tournament play. I am not surprised at all to see 40 tournament points out of Gordon Hayward today. I will be surprised if the winning lineup today doesn't have multiple Celtics, even on a 10-game slate. I'll go ahead and get out in front of it and say, I'd be surprised if your winning lineup on DraftKings or FanDuel doesn't have 2 Celtics in it, just because guys are priced too good. So Gordon Hayward, give or take a little bit on 5K, makes a ton of sense. Without Horford, Marcus Morris becomes much more secure. Finally, his prices has reverted where for the longest time he was too cheap on FanDuel. Now it's about appropriately priced, but just tremendous in this spot now at that price. Aaron Baines in the game with Horford out against the Cavs earlier this year I believe missed a double-double by a rebound or something. I think he had 10, 9, and 3 behind that. Perfectly wonderful tournament play. You decided to punt center on FanDuel in anything you want on DK at 35. The minutes are capped for a reason. Like you will probably get 20. I would project him for like 23. I'd be shocked if you saw 26. It's just there's a decent chance of a blowout, which is gonna turn into Robbie Williams or more likely Daniel Tice. Daniel Tice, not an unreasonable, especially FanDuel, 3,600. There's a very, very big upside there and a very big chance of getting crap. So really like him as a punt on FanDuel at 3,600, where he's a power forward. But Terry Rozier is really good chalk. He disappointed in that last game. I do think that was like a bottom 5% performance. I think if you play that game or this game 100 times, his average fantasy point production ends up being in the area of 30. Getting under 20 like that, I think was really a very, very bottom projection there. I don't have a problem playing him alongside Brad Wanamaker, who ended up doing a lot of the ball handling and got a lot of time that Rozier didn't end up getting in that game. Would be playing in a blowout, basically minimum price everywhere. You can play Wanamaker, you can play Smart, you can certainly play Jaylen Brown, who will come off the bench, I expect, but is 4,300 on FanDuel, where that's a very droppable number. Same price on DK, most unattractively priced on Yahoo for him. It's juicy all around. So I probably still prioritize Rozier. There is a chance against this really woeful Cavs defense that he just puts up a monster number. It's really hard for him to hurt you at his price. He's 4K on DraftKings. He's 4,500 on FanDuel, which, again, somehow if he gets 18 or whatever he had last time again, you drop him. So, I really think the Celtics are in an amazing spot. And as looking across from that, as opposed to that, the Cavs are like, I can see doing, like Ante Zizic in a tournament, but he'd be like my center 17. I can see doing Alec Burks on FanDuel, where he's 3,800 and droppable, and he got over 30 in that last ass kicking by the Celtics. There's a couple things you could do here, but the Cavs are wholly unappealing. I would be most interested in playing one of the kids who usually plays in a blowout. Cameron Payne was one of my favorite Cavs plays 3 days in a row last week, and he was amazing in the first one and amazing in the second one. And then they started him in the third one, which completely screwed him because he didn't get blowout run. You really like having Colin Sexton or Jordan Clarkson or Ante Zizic or Cameron Payne in spots like this because they will be in the rotation, and at least 3 of those 4 guys will still be on the court if they do happen to get their ass kicked. Sometimes you get uber usage out of, campaign in a spot like that. He had 3 out of 4 games over the last couple of weeks where he put up, a dozen to 15 fantasy points in the fourth quarter because he ended up being one of the alphas on that blowout run team there. But so many better options today. Don't really have to go there. Don't really have to do a lot with the Cavs.
So you mentioned that you would be surprised if there weren't 2 Celtics in a winning lineup tonight. How many Celtics are too many Celtics? It's a pace down spot here versus the Cavs. And like you mentioned, there is some blowout risk, which I guess you could also play both sides of that, where you have the guys getting into the blowout and the guys receiving time in the blowout. But how many would be too many guys for you here on the Boston side?
It's going to depend on the guys, and it's going to be site dependent. Like, you can ignore exposure to Wanamaker. You can tolerate one being shit on FanDuel. So, like, if you have 4 on FanDuel, like, I don't, and it really depends which ones. So, let's say on FanDuel you have, I don't know, let's say you have Rozier, Wanamaker, Brown, and Hayward. I think that's fine. Rozier, Wanamaker, Brown, and Marcus Morris. I think that's fine. Hayward and Marcus Morris, you're starting to have yourself a little bit. I would probably rather build that lineup with one of them than both of them. So it's sort of going to depend on who, but it's going to be really hard to roster too many Celtics, especially because they're just kind of so cheap that you're going to get done, and then you're going to have to go get your James Hardens or some such.
All right, that seems fair to me. Talk to me more about James Harden here. You talked a little bit about the Kenneth Faried news, him going into the starting lineup. Nene ruled out for rest. How confident are you feeling with James Harden here? He does own a 100-point game, fantasy point game versus his Knicks within the last couple seasons. Not a ton of ownership on him today, at least in our projections, but that could go up with some of the value opening up. How are you feeling about him?
Yeah, he's a monster. I don't have, much to add versus everyone's like the whole 50-60% usage, but I mean it's clearly, I think I have him as my number 1 projected play today by 19 points or some crazy 16
fair spread.
16 and a half, but just I think a safe projection for him is in the low 70s, which is insane. He's one of the few players to ever get to that point. He's actually, above the crazy Westbrook run. Not a ton to add. I like running it back with some members of the Knicks. Cantor does feel like the safest one just because it is a massive spot. He is a better Jared Allen at this point, and we watched him spank the hell out of this team. Faried versus Tucker is not a noticeable improvement on defense. It's going to be slightly better rebounding, but Cantor's one of the best rebounders in the NBA. I'd project him for like something pretty dumb, like 0.8 rebounds per minute. So obviously there's some fuckitude whenever you play anyone on the Knicks with maybe Mitchell Robinson, plays 29 minutes off the bench. But that would require Mitchell Robinson to not get in foul trouble with James Harden flying into the lane every 5 seconds. I don't know. It just seems the most likely scenario is you get like 28 minutes out of Enes Kanter and he scores 40, and he's obviously way too cheap for that exposure. So, big fan of Enes this evening.
Yeah, that seems fair to me. I guess my one concern there, and you can tell me if you feel like this is a valid one or not, he's not going to be very switchable here. And it seems like they could just try to get him onto Harden over and over and over again. And it's going to be really problematic for him to the point where I wonder if he could even stay on the floor. Would that be a concern for you at all if he's going to be 30% owned plus?
Yeah, it's a concern. If you're looking at, the ways he fails are, 1, gets in significant foul trouble, which isn't really his thing. But again, James Harden is James Harden. He's pretty good at swinging through and getting those fouls. The second scenario you're concerned about is that one, in that they just pick and roll and beat him to death. Again, there were those Warriors series back when they just literally were like mocking him on the court, like, who wants to score on Enes Kanter now? You? Okay, go do it, Draymond. Your turn, Clay. Like, it was one of the more clowny, embarrassing things I've seen on a professional basketball court that they did. My boy like that. But there's just not enough other options. Like, I really like Noah Vonleh. I like Noah Vonleh in the spot, but they've been really weird with his minutes. He managed to get over 30 last time. That was nice, but had games recently where he didn't get in foul trouble and still got like 25 minutes. So, this team is a real mess knowing what to do with them. But Kanter just, in this spot, should score around a fantasy point and a half a minute. It's hard to get away from that at the cheap price, and because Cornette is out, they're going to have to try really hard not to let him do extremely well. So, yeah, Daddy likes.
Tell me about another big injury spot here. Anthony Davis ruled out. Apparently, the timeline might not be as long as people initially thought. But his fill-in, Jahlil Okafor, had a pretty nice day in that debut there. Got a ton of minutes. It's a little bit due to foul trouble with Julius Randle.
Yeah.
Okafor projected to be one of the higher-owned players on the slate today. How are you feeling about him and also the other bigs there with Randle and Mirotic now in the rotation again?
Yeah, it's again a lot of site dependent pricing, but as a vague statement, I certainly like Randall and Mirotic a little more than Okafor. Like Okafor, I presume Andre Drummond will suit up and play in this game, and that ends up being a more difficult spot for his part of game, doing the sort of Thomas Robinson, Thomas Bryant, put back based game. Not going to be as many rebounds available. Just so that doesn't speak as well for him, and the price has gotten crazy. So Yahoo, $12, yeah, sure, $12 I love. But the other two sites where he's banged up to 5 and change and 4 and change, I think he's fine in tournaments. There is an upside to be had there, but I would generally rather pivot to other players. Still really like Mirotic, FanDuel especially, 6,700, just a guy with a 50 point ceiling that you can really see coming a number of ways in this matchup. That feels great. I think Randall should be playing 35 minutes, not the 28 minutes he got in that game, which was largely due to foul trouble. I expect this game to stay close. I don't hate Elfrid Payton. It is not cashy whatsoever, but there is a very, very real upside for Elfrid Payton in this spot. He's got... he has, I think, recorded a triple-double in the past against Reggie and the Pistons. The upside is there, is being my point. Not having Davis there can make him more frenetic, more variable, but we like that in tournament plays. The ownership will be non-existent, but I'm not shocked to see that work out. And I really like Drew Holiday. Monster spot for him. Shocked if you don't get like 45. Maybe a little trouble getting to the ceiling at that price, but I wouldn't have any objection to Drew Holiday. One of a number of high-priced shooting guards who I would definitely like having some exposure to.
Let's see. Looking at the premium Slack for any relevant questions, but any other games you want to hit on up front while I patrol for anything interesting that might be asked of us?
Let's see. I like Dwayne Dedmon a lot tonight, especially on DraftKings, where he is 56.
Yes. Can you talk about this game actually overall? Because so Chicago's been a team who I feel like has trapped me a bunch of times now, but everything in this game in particular points where all the faith in them not being as terrible as they may seem pays off. An 11-point up on their season average from Vegas in their projections in the over-under there. It seems like a great spot to load up on them, but obviously they've let people down a variety of ways. So how are you feeling about Chicago and also the Atlanta side?
Yeah, this is I think a game we do want to reasonably target. The continued likely absence, I don't think we have confirmed of, but I still think we're sitting on doubtful for Kevin Porter. Makes us a little more confident in getting appreciable wing minutes out of Dwayne Dedmon, out of Taurean Prince, who is especially too cheap on FanDuel, where he's 4,400, and again puts him in droppable in this matchup with the Bulls. You think must carry a really big upside there. I like Dedmon quite a bit. This is a matchup really, I think, tailor-made for him. Would have preferred Wendell, but having Rolo out there doesn't overly concern me, and there's 45-point upside out of him in a where he's going to be relatively low-owned in the single digits, only 5,600 on DK. You can play him. So me like you quite a bit there. As far as looking over at Chicago, I think my preference is Chris Dunn. This is, I have Chris Dunn projected for about 35 fantasy points. That feels pretty good at 6,300 on DK. With some real upside beyond that. All these guys priced too cheaply on Yahoo, where there's just obviously super upside in a matchup with the Hawks. So Lauri Markkanen, Zach LaVine, Chris Dunn. I think the first three names you're going to look at. I think you can Bobby Portis in a tournament, though the minutes are still concerning, and I'd want to be playing a lot of lineups before I went that route. I don't think you're going to get enough minutes out of Jabari to make that a reasonable decision. But even Robin Lopez as a punt, I would have exposure to in a massive tournament slate. Corey Brewer will start again, so he makes a lot of sense. Keep in mind the matchup isn't great, so mostly a FanDuel play for me. You're likely not going to get the... pretty sure there was significant steal and block upside last game he started. I will check, but that tends to be the method by which you get a decent game out of Corey Brewer, who does have, very active jazz hands and the whole thing, but certainly a number of ways that goes sideways. 2 steals and 2 blocks in that game to get, half of his 25 fantasy points on FanDuel. You get, 12 from the 2 steals and the 2 blocks in 32 minutes. So If he only has a steal and a block in that game, that's 19 fantasy points in 32 minutes, and it's a matchup with the Spurs. So do not go nuts on Corey Brewer starting news. But that game's really interesting to see what happens. I think if you have only Simmons or Embiid in there, and I don't know if we're going to get this news on time, although I would have a Simmons and Embiid plan right now. Whether you're running one lineup or 100 lineups, what do you do if we get news?
Simmons is ruled in while you were talking, by the way.
Simmons was
Embiid's
ruled in while we were talking?
Yep.
Okay, so Simmons, I think, is just fine on DraftKings regardless. I like the matchup with the Spurs for him. 8,600 on DK is an especially lovely price. I like him regardless, and obviously you'll have late swap possibility there. The prices other places now a little bit prohibitive, but there is potentially a massive upside in the event that Joel Embiid doesn't play this one. But I would be concerned about a blowout. They did play once already this year, and with all hands on deck, the Spurs kicked the shit out of them. So, if you lose Butler and you lose Embiid, a greater chance of this blowing out again. I don't like to predict blowouts, but I like to acknowledge their potentiality, and that would be concerning for me.
How about the other side there? How about DeRozan now coming off of really a series of terrible games, but his usage is up there still, and Aldridge has been killing. It seems like it's an interesting potential game stack spot with some of the value out there.
Yeah, don't disagree whatsoever. I would say that I carry concern. I feel better that Jimmy Butler's out. That would have been my number one defensive concern in that situation. And the price is way down. So again, in this place, you are looking at just upside in ownership, and I expect ownership to remain fairly low. And there's no reason in this spot he can't put up a very big number. Again, when you looked at that game earlier this year, they crushed them. That even in limited minutes, you got 40 to 45 out of DeRozan and Aldridge and Gay. So I think you want Embiid to be in at this point. And Embiid, pretty sexy for me. The FanDuel price at 10.8 is pretty reasonable. I'm not excited about Aldridge. I'm not excited about the Spurs. But I do think he's such a, preternaturally powerful player that getting 70 out of him here wouldn't really shock me that much anyway. And he's one of very few centers on FanDuel who aren't kind of overpriced. FanDuel centers today are really, you're playing 10K play. Like, he's $600 more than Gobert. He's, just all the centers are way up there. He's less than $1,000 more than Vooch. And again, I like those guys. I think they have an upside. But Joel Embiid is Joel Embiid. And I do expect him to play. He has played through this, my back is screwed up many, many times in a row. I imagine he goes out there again. But, I'm probably 70-30 on that. So difficult to go there on FanDuel. But FanDuel is where that price feels the most appealing to me. So.
All right. Talk to me a little bit about Nikola. Actually, no, here's a question from, actually, let's hold off on this because it's going to be answered in 2 minutes. Talk to me a little about Nikola Vucevic and I guess this Magic Nets game. D'Angelo Russell on the other side, pretty appealing as well, on a nice run of over 50-point fantasy games. Looking strong, look like his minutes are kind of solidifying in a way where he's not getting the hook over and over again, what seems like he's rolling. Is this game of any interest to you at all with the Nets and the Magic?
Yeah, I think that there are places you can go here. Obviously, the price on we're no longer getting the discount on D'Angelo Russell, but put up I think near 60 when these two teams just played. So there is still an upside at that number, and we expect the ownership to be pretty low. So him, Fournier across the ball, same position, put up about 40 in that game, which feels just fine. But you're no longer getting the discount we were getting when he was sitting at 4,700 not that long ago. So that's a little disappointing. The pace isn't that great. We expect Gordon to be back and starting. He's kind of cheap. I definitely think you can Aaron Gordon. There is a very real upside there. But Vooch, had about 50 in that game. That's about what you would project him for in this one. So, no amazing value spots at the price of guys. Ed Davis is still compelling his value. He'll play somewhere between 20 and 26 minutes probably, but is generally good for a little more than a fantasy point a minute. So basically a cash play more than anything else. It's pretty rare you hit the 40 spots out of him. If you're in tournaments, you probably want to chase upside somewhere else. But that's some interest in this game, but no one jumping off the page is a guy you have to play.
All right, we're at about the halfway point of the show, so it is time for a little halftime Daddy Likes. Let's transition into a question from Makad in the premium Slack because it ties right into our ownership projections at awesemo.com, which you can get 50% off of your first month off. Use promo code Live Before Lock. You get the ownership projections as well as rankings from Awesemo. The projections, which are done by Josh Engelman and a bunch of staffers who chip in to make sure it's updated around the clock and accurately. And of course, Fast Eddie Fears rankings as well. So use that promo code Live Before Lock now to get 50% off. Makad is asking, Terry Rozier is sitting at 61% on DK. Do you think it's safe to come well under that tonight? Or is the matchup too good? So how does Daddy feel about that?
It's not safe. The matchup is strong. I think the most likely scenario is that Terry Rozier goes out and plays somewhere in the area of 30 to 32 minutes and puts up roughly that many fantasy points. The matchup is extremely strong. So is it safe? No, because you're accepting a real chance that 2/3 of the lineups just start up a few points on you there. But there is enough of an advantage to it as a strategy that I don't think it's necessarily wrong. If you have 20% Terry Rozier, I'm not panicking, being like, oh God, I'm only at what a third of the field is. But it is a strong spot with a huge ceiling. So I would directly, if I'm doing that, I would try to load up on the other areas where I would try to play a little more Gordon Hayward, a little more Marcus Smart, who I didn't allude to in the first time, through a little more Jaylen Brown to sort of cover for that, because I find it pretty unlikely that the Celtics as a whole are going to underperform in this spot. But, I wouldn't be having puppies. But if your question is it safe? No, it's not. It's not a play I would look at as safe, because there is the most likely scenario is you dogging it by a few points, but you're taking a stand that potentially advantages you on 60% of the field, and great risk comes great upside. So that's.
There was a lot of dog analogies in a 2-sentence span there.
Sorry?
You said I wouldn't be having puppies, and I don't like something about dogs in there too.
Dogging it.
It's a big dog day here. Let's go to number 2 on the list. Kenneth Faried, 35% on DraftKings.
Yeah, and I like it. Matchup with the Knicks is exceptional. I think he's at 32 minutes now. It's a really good spot. It actually really ends up projecting pretty similar to the spot we expect out of Rozier here. So both of them are fadeable. I would probably very slightly rather fade Faried, but they're both good chalk.
Number 3 on the list for Daddy here, Enes Kanter, 34% ownership, so just 1% behind Kenneth Faried.
Yeah, that's appropriate. I'm definitely checking news. I enjoy playing Mitchell Robinson as an obvious leverage play there. He's 3,600 on DK. That's a really inexpensive price. So I do think that can certainly work out for you, and obviously if Kanter gets in foul trouble or hurt or something, there's potentially the real upside there, and he is a very, very good fantasy point producer. Both these guys are, and it's a strong matchup. But Daddy generally still likes that. Enes Kanter, $5,000 in this position is just a bit too cheap. He costs $5,000. I think a reasonable projection for him is in the high 30s in fantasy points. That's too cheap.
How about Jahlil Okafor? Another center is going to be popular today. 29% projected ownership on DraftKings.
Yeah, that I'm probably moving away from. I'll go with that. He doesn't like that. Compared to Faried, the matchup is just so much worse at a similar price. I would much rather play Kenneth Faried. Okafor also just any number of ways that he just sort of screws it up. Frankly, not a player who plays within himself as much as he should. And just dealing with Drummond, I'm not surprised to see him get into some quick foul trouble. And again, I'm worried the minutes get limited or turn into more Check Diallo, or just they don't need him as much because Randall is doing so well. There's just more ways that doesn't work out that well. That Houston team is very thin. So I'll go with don't like on Okafor.
And a little bit behind him in price and ownership, Jaylen Brown coming in at number 5, 24% projected ownership on DraftKings.
Yeah, I will probably come in under that as well. There are a number of other tournament plays I like in similar areas. I would much rather play Rozier. I think Brown is just fine. There's obviously a ceiling, but I like Dwayne Wade a lot against the Clippers. Even James Johnson being out helps a little bit with that, but he probably gets his 25, 27 minutes. Really hard for him to disappoint at 4,800, which is $500 more. But I think a little more likely that you bang out a 40-point upside. He was really good against the Clippers when they played not long ago, and he just randomly has a thing against the Clippers. I think he's got 4 out of his last 5 against them at 45 plus fantasy points. But again, a lot of those are going back to the Blake Griffin, Chris Paul days, so it's not terribly relevant. But I like Dwayne Wade as a guy who I have projected for very nearly 30 for 4,800, and I think there's upside for 40 or something beyond that. So probably Jaylen Brown, another one I'd be slightly more inclined to move away from, but objectively a very good play at 4,300. On DK, I would probably take the bonus and maybe go with Marcus Smart. If we have Marcus Smart that lower projected ownership relative to Jaylen Brown, they're pretty similar projections for me. So I would probably go to Smart at that point at a lower projected ownership.
Yeah, Marcus Morris at about half the ownership, and Marcus Smart a little bit more than half the ownership. But yeah, they're both substantially behind Jaylen Brown on DraftKings. So there you go. Similar question here from Chris in the Premium Slack. And again, the Premium Slack is included with the membership to Awesemo.com. So use that promo code Live Before Lock. You want to get priority seating on the flight that is the Live Before Lock show and all these shows here. Morris or Fareed on FanDuel, who would you say has more raw points?
That's really close for me. I did not rerun the Rockets with the starting news and the Nene resting news, but that would bump them very close to a 30-point projection for me. So that would be, a pure ownership play for me. So I'd probably play Marcus Morris at what I suspect will be lower ownership than Kenneth Fareed. But I would have them both projected for very close to 30 fantasy points, right about on the nose.
Raboshua in the Premium Slack is asking for a little blowout talk. And of course, it's hard to project blowouts, but it is a game where Vegas does have a 15-point spread for the home team. If I guaranteed you that the Celtics would blow them out by 20, who would be your top 3 plays on each side?
That's a great question. Really, really nicely done there. For the Cavs, it would be pretty clearly at this point. Well, actually, there's a little bit of room for just there, but probably Cameron Payne, Colin Sexton, and the blowout run the Celtics would be running him at center. So Cameron Payne, Colin Sexton, and Jordan Clarkson. Putting them all in the same lineup would make me feel bad, so I'd probably pivot one of them to Zizic if I could, just because of the usage. But all those guys would be out there for blowout probably. Clarkson's come down to being much more possible now for the upside he possesses. So probably Clarkson, Zizic, and Sexton, I imagine. For the Celtics, Daniel Tice would certainly be there. After that, it's a little bit interesting. Probably Tice, Wanamaker, and Smart, or Tice, Wanamaker, and Brown.
All right. SJM asking, is Mitchell Robinson a good pivot off of Baines for GPP? I guess it would depend what site you're on, but I think Robin.
Yeah, so Mitchell Robinson's a fantasy point freak. Talked about him a lot in Summer League. Skipped a year recently, but raw, but powerful, massive block guy, very good rebounder. There's all the upside there, and makes an immediate pivot off a chalky Enes Kanter. So yes.
Any thoughts on Spencer Dinwiddie for a GPP on FanDuel?
Like him a lot. 58 or whatever he is on FanDuel is still cheap enough where lots of ways he can get 40 out there. Again, good leverage off a probably 10% owned D'Angelo Russell. So I like him quite a bit. No issues with running him there. Andre Drummond is still a game time decision, so they're still going back and forth on that. The price is no longer appealing, but Blake Griffin against the Pelicans with no Andre Drummond is a 60, 70 point spot. Like, that is a lot of work. So, I have some interest in running out like Blake Griffin in tournaments right now. It's going to be a good matchup regardless. And if you're giving me that possibility, that's fine. Zaza's probably getting a little bit too cute. It's not the best spot for him at the pace the Pellies play. It's obviously fine at 42, but he would come in behind Okafor and Fareed and all the other guys we're talking about in that low 4K center-ish range.
Yep, I think that does make sense.
Drummond? Kevin Huerter is out.
Yes, Kevin Huerter officially out, so not that matters much. I think everything that we have on the site at least reflected him being doubtful and more likely to be out, so there you go. Drummond, it's surprising because he went through shoot around, right? I think I saw that.
Yeah, he went through shoot around.
But he has a concussion, so he's still in the protocol, I guess.
Yeah, I when you go through the concussion protocol, there's a number of steps, and I get it confused from league to league and sport to sport. But there's a point at which you are allowed to do non-contact things like shooting, which comes a step before. Like, you have to, they take a baseline, and then you have to pass various steps. And he may be cleared up to that, but not yet cleared to basically take contact, where you take another elbow to the noggin when you're recovering from a concussion. It's not good time. So I presume that they are undergoing that test now, and at some point you will find out if that's good to go.
They're clubbing him in the head with wiffle ball bats and seeing how he responds over and over
Yeah,
again.
exactly.
Okay, that's what I assume. That's what science does. Point guards on FanDuel. A question from 1.6. Who'd be your favorite 4.6K and under point guard not named Terry Rozier on FanDuel?
Fred VanVleet, I think, is 4.6 on the nose. Did I get that right, or did they bring him up? I
I
will
believe he's
look.
4.6
Heading
on both
over
sides.
4.6. So Fred immediately comes to mind. Again, the matchup isn't thrilling. He's going to be chalky. Don't kill yourself. You can play Jeremy Lin in a very strong matchup. That's a fine tournament pivot. You can play DJ Augustine. That's fine. I don't
Boy,
really want
blowout
to
Cam
Cameron
Payne.
Payne at that price or Tyler Johnson. I'd be fine with TJ McConnell, especially on FanDuel. Steal upside. I like TJ McConnell quite a bit, so that makes sense in tournaments. And a Wanamaker at 3,700, but again, I don't know if you get anything for that $900 we're leaving on the table. So.
Rinpack asking, each one more versus Dion Waiters versus Rodney Hood. They're all $10 on Yahoo. Who do you like? Waiters, I find interesting today. It's 30% usage rate almost his last two games. Which,
Yeah, I would probably
knows
go with
that'll hold.
Waiters. I'd probably go with Waiters at the tenor. At that point, he's usage monster. Some reasonable chance. That they are down. James Johnson was just flow minutes all around, and he can pick up a couple extra. It's a horrible team to project, but I would go there or Hood. I think would come in second for me of those guys.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Thoughts on Miles Turner on FanDuel? Nobody ever talks about Miles Turner. His usage been down a little bit since he came back from injury, but still been mostly good, more than not. How are you feeling about him?
Yeah, I think he's an absolutely great tournament center. Just a block machine. Has been fine against Toronto in the past, against Ibaka in the past, so it's not a matchup I'm overly concerned with. He's one of the centers who's priced appropriately. Like, if you look at the other centers, 10-7 for Jokic in a worst possible matchup doesn't feel great. 10-2 for Gobert doesn't feel great. 9-9 for Vooch. It's a really good spot, but that's, 9-9. 9-1 for Drummond. That's a really good spot. Don't feel too bad. But, Turner at 7-2, yeah, he's priced appropriately for his tournament upside. Cantor there is priced fairly as opposed to, well unfairly on DK where he's just too cheap. Okafor, 5,500. That's crazy stuff. Mitchell Robinson even 3,600 on DK is 4,400 here. There's like very few deals. I mean, Zaza becomes probably. Baines is probably your best punt right now, but Zaza would enter that conversation in the event we do get that Drummond news as appropriate.
We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I feel like it's probably worth revisiting because the numbers are up on the YouTube channel. And by the way, if you are watching on YouTube right now, hit that like button. It helps us out quite a bit here. Get above the other shows out there who are not grinding as hard and here for you every day as we are. Gibbs15 asking any thoughts on the Bulls Hawks stack. I guess, Eddie, take me through your thoughts on that a little bit faster this time, but just what you're thinking about it overall.
I like it quite a bit. We're happy that Huerter is out. It's site dependent. Again, I do my rankings every day on DraftKings, and that is the site played by the largest percentage of the people in our premium chat watching the show. So I'll defer to that to answer your question. Probably my favorite guys in order on the Bulls would be Dunn. I'm probably going to go Dunn, Levine, Markkanen. I don't mind if you somehow, randomly run Rolo in there as like the value piece or something like that. Don't really want a Jabari, don't really want a Chandler. As far as the Hawks go, if you're running back that stack, probably I like Lynn at his price on DK. I like John Collins. There's a giant rebounding upside there. I'm shocked if he doesn't get 20 and 10 in the spot. Like, the price isn't cheap anymore, but it's a really, really nice situation for him, and Deadman. So those would be the guys probably in order that I would look at.
Who would be your favorite value small forward play for a DK GPP, and that excludes Jaylen Brown?
All right, he is forward eligible there. Value, small forward play. I gotta look. None of the guys on my list are both value and small forward, so.
Hutchinson, a very punty one, but probably not so great for DK.
Yeah, I mean, everyone versus the Hawks feels kind of good, so I get the theory that you're operating with there. Waiters is eligible at 4.3. I don't love it. Chetty at 4.2. Derek Jones Jr. at 4.1 would be pretty good in the event we get the news there. E'Twaun Moore is dealing with a minutes restriction, by the way, whoever asked about him a minute ago, so some concern there. Probably Justin Holiday, though. Assuming the game does not get smoked out Mexican City style, 3,700. Apparently going to pretty regularly be playing the 30 minutes that we thought he should, actually 36, 38, and 30 out of the last three. So $3,700 Justin Holiday would be my answer to that question.
I'd also throw Gerald Green in there for $200 more. He's
Sure.
an interesting play, getting
Sure.
about 14,
I'll
15
prefer
chances.
Justin Holiday a little bit. They're filling out a little bit more on the wings there, with giving a little more time to NS, and having Freed there, I think, reduces his usage a little bit. But there's certainly no issue with Gerald Green in tournaments. Very, very few days you're going to have an issue with Gerald Green in tournaments against a team like the Knicks. Like, he gets there when he just bombs away threes. Absolutely no reason he can't do it in that spot. So, yeehaw.
Let's see. Are we overlooking Hayward? You talked about it a little bit up top, but give us your thoughts on Gordon Hayward one more time.
No, I don't. I mean, I don't think we're overlooking him. I think he is an elite tournament play because the ownership won't be that high, and I'm not shocked at all in a great matchup to see randomly him getting 40 to 50. Wouldn't surprise me at all. He's done it a couple times this year. He's done it when Kyrie is out. The conditions are perfect. There's nothing good on TV. Conditions are perfect. So, that being said, we also saw him in an equally brilliant spot, just stand there and watch the game. So, it really is difficult to predict what's going to happen there. So is he being overlooked? No, I like him a lot in tournaments, especially Yahoo and FanDuel, where he's 17 and 4,900, if I recall correctly. I do think there's big upside there. It's fine in tournaments. Yeah, I mean, we like all the Celtics today. Only so many of them will get there. He's one of my more favorite guys in tournaments. So I don't think we're overlooking him. I'm not surprised to see 20. I'm not surprised to see 40 out of him today. Like, he really has a very gigantic delta of possible outcomes in this spot.
Let's talk real fast about a Thrive Fantasy, of course, the DFS app where players draft a lineup built to prop bets of only top-tier athletes. This is a game that we haven't talked about at all today, and I feel like the industry in general is not really talked about. But I wanted to hit on this prop involving Jamal Murray, and maybe it's just worth talking about this Nuggets-Utah game real fast. But Jamal Murray on Thrive Fantasy, they have him for an over-under of 16.5 points. Here, the over gets you 85 and the under gets you 115. What are you doing with Jamal Murray on an over-under of 16.5 points?
With the weighting, I will take the under. With the team coming back and basically all healthy, or at least all present and accounted for at this point, I'd be more inclined to take the under there. His minutes are going to trend closer to 30 or 32. Denver as a team has really struggled in Utah. Just not a great spot if you're weighting it like that. I would take the under. It's difficult for me to get to that price in that matchup for him where he's like $7,000. If he was better discounted for the matchup and cost, $5,900 or something, I would have some interest. But there's a real chance they get their ass kicked. They're really going to even out the minutes. It has not been a great environment for Jokic in the past, dealing with Gobert. Not a lot to like in that game. We don't know what kind of minutes we're going to get out of Rubio. That directly correlates with the usage on Donovan Mitchell and directly correlates with the minutes on Royce. Ingles has looked like shit. Crowder and Favors are trading minutes back and forth. The price on Gobert, at least on DK, is somewhat attractive. 8,200, I think there is a big upside to be hit there in tournaments. But I appropriately hesitant on this game. You look at Denver, who, again, when you're talking about Utah, Denver's defense is really up and down. There are sometimes they're a really good defensive unit, and there's sometimes they're just not present. Maybe it's not present day on the road in Utah. But now you have Beasley being less useful because you're getting 16, 18, 20, 24 minutes out of Gary Harris. I don't know what. Gary Harris, wicked cheap some places, by the way. I'm trying to remember that he's like 39 or 42 or some really crazy number on one of the sites. But, he's getting time back. Barton's getting time back. Millsap. Millsap would probably be the first guy I'd look at, like FanDuel where he's 5,500. If they get in a close game, he will play 30-something minutes. Someone today was worried, I'm worried about Millsap's minutes. They have blown out the last 3 games. Twice they won, once they got their ass kicked. Which is why you were getting 22, 24 minutes out of him. The game before that, much closer to his injury, obviously, he played 30, 31 minutes because it was a competitive game. So Millsap probably the first guy I go to there, but not an appetizing fantasy environment for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I would also stick the under on Murray's points as well. I think that's a decent bet there. the Nuggets not a fun team right now. A little too many bodies there, and I think all the points you raised are pretty valid. Got some either ors in the premium slack to burn through here. How about Serge Ibaka or Pascal Siakam for DK GPP?
I probably in a GPP, assuming the $300 I think it is doesn't get you somewhere, will go for lower ownership on Pascal, and I do think the ownership is significantly lower, around 40%. So I will go with Pascal there. I have them projected pretty nearly identically. James Johnson isn't in starting. People wanted me to announce, so and he's interesting. If you look at his number one game in minutes this year, came against the Pistons. He played 29 minutes when they played the Pistons, I want to say off the top of my head. I think it was the one game they really let him stretch his legs. And he's one of their best on-ball defenders, so they stick him on Blake. Like, that's sort of the plan there. And then that makes plenty of sense. But James Johnson on an insane tournament play now at whatever, $3,700, $3,900, $10. But it's just tournaments, and there's a real chance he plays like 13 minutes. So just watch your ass. I mean, that team is deep as all hell, so...
And another dude with migraine problems on that team. It's Tyler Johnson having a bunch. A lot of migraines going on. The Miami nightlife. Terrence Ross and Blake Griffin, or Ben Simmons and I assume Marcus Morris on Yahoo.
I'd go with the latter one right now, but I really like both of those pairings for tournaments. We're starting to price out Terrence Ross a little bit, and it's not the greatest pace. So I don't hate him, certainly in play. I'd be a little more inclined towards the second pairing right now. Although, snap Blake if Drummond isn't in. It increases projection by a few points for me, but would raise his ceiling by like 20. Like if there's, Blake putting up 80 sans Drummond versus the Pelicans would not be a shock for me, or at least around 80 would be the point at which I'd be like, wow, that's a really good game out of him. Like he could really do some serious damage. So again, have a Blake plan.
How about Markkanen or Mirotic for Yahoo GPP?
I'll go Mirotic. I like Markkanen. And again, that's an ownership question. DK, that was DK. Was that question or Yahoo?
No, yeah, Yahoo.
That's interesting. If I have Julius Randle, which you probably should on a lot of Yahoo lineups, he's still a little too cheap there, and he's forward eligible, where there's a real center crunch in lineup construction on Yahoo. I probably will go to Markkanen. If I don't have Randle, I'm probably playing Mirotic there.
Would you go Dunn or Lowry for FanDuel cash?
Oh, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. I will go with Chris Dunn, but I have no objection to you playing both of them, though one of them and Rozier is probably what you have in cash.
If Gasol is out in a FanDuel GPP, would you go Eric Gordon and Ivan Rabb or Brown and JaMychal Green?
I would go Brown and JaMychal Green.
Yeah, I don't think you can say for sure Ivan Rabb's going to get minutes at this point.
I would suspect he would get into the teens or something, but I would definitely go with the second one. There's a number of ways they can run this team now. But, yeah. Good thing to have a plan.
Any thoughts on Aaron Gordon today?
I like him. I expect him to start and do well. The matchup, I think, is very strong for him. There is the big ceiling there, and the price is tolerable still to me. So I think just due to the various nuances of lineup construction on this slate, his ownership should be really, really small. And, there's not much more you can ask for there. He's, 68 or 67. Like, he is a very difficult guy to project. There are guys who... again, I feel like I get right 90% of the time. You just know when this guy's going to perform and know when he is. And Aaron Gordon never qualifies as that. It's very difficult for me at least, I'll speak for myself, to know when he's going to be aggressive and productive. So I think he's a great tournament play, just based on the fact that there's the matchup he's starting. He's got the questionable designation, which knocks his ownership down a little bit. But I like Aaron Gordon quite a bit in tournaments. I say that, with saying that just he has the upside in this spot. I'm not shocked if just, Vooch goes off and does his thing and Terrence Ross takes a lot of shots and Fournier gets really involved and Aaron Gordon has 31 fantasy points because he only shoots 5 of 9 from the field and yada yada. But I like Aaron Gordon in tournaments quite a bit.
He's got a nice history versus Brooklyn, but I agree. I don't know if there's enough shots to go around there with a bunch of guys who have been pretty effective with the possessions they've had. Leonard Justin Holiday for Yahoo GPP.
Yeah, good question. I like both those guys. Yeah, I like both matchup too. I'm actually going to incline towards Justin Holiday. Like, I like Lynn a lot, but I think Justin Holiday is playing 36 minutes. I can't get away from that.
Let's see, Aaron Gordon again. Any thoughts on Paul Millsap, FanDuel? I think you touched on him fast, but real quick.
I like him. Tournaments 55 or something. Again, if this game stays close, which I think is fairly likely, um, he's going to, see 30, 31 minutes. At 5,500 is just too cheap for Paul Millsap. You randomly get 50 burgers out of him all the time where he decides to do, steals and blocks. So yeah, I'm in for that.
Eric asking if he's crazy to fade Cantor. He doesn't trust the Knicks on DK Cash.
No, that's not crazy, and your rationale is absolutely reasonable.
If any team you could just say I don't trust them, that is one team you could just.
Yeah,
that's the reason.
They have problems.
Yeah, and the defensive switching is something that concerns me either, Eric. So I think you're not wrong. I'm still with Cash. I think I'd be more inclined to go with the field, but I get the logic. Vooch or Blake, straight up.
Vooch and Cash, Blake in tournaments for me as of right now.
Let's see. People talking about Brad Wanamaker. DK Cash, Randall and Dedman, or Blake and Fareed?
Yeah. Both Dedman and Blake are a little specious as Cash plays, but I'll go with Randall and Dedman between those two.
Thoughts on Bullock Moses Guthrie says Bollocks, the British pronunciation of Reggie Bullock's name, one to presume, or any other value in Detroit. Anybody there popping to you besides including Reggie Bullock?
No, it's a mess. I like the matchup, obviously, and I ranked them all, but they're all D's in cash in season tournaments. So you want a Luke Kennard? No problem. He got 21 minutes last game. You want a Bruce Brown Jr.? No problem. He got 21 minutes last game. You want a Langston Galloway? You want a Reggie Bullock, who's now priced a little more appropriately? So they are... Bullock probably the safest of them as tournament plays, but you're also spending more than all those other guys. So, zero or one of them will be halfway decent. If I'm building, 100 lineups, yeah, I can see having some exposure to those guys. I'm certainly not forcing it.
Let's see. Tobias Harris thoughts. The guy who was super disappointing yesterday, but had a good first game without Danilo Gallinari in the lineup. How are you feeling about him?
Yeah, what was really interesting is the way the shots were distributed in that game. He got basically his full minutes running. I want to say Tobias Harris took 9 shots, which, that's about half what he averages with Gallinari in. So I was absolutely stunned to see him out there just not involved in the offensive end of the game. Now, the matchup had something to do with it, but, I do expect that to revert. I do think there's upside there. I do think at his expense that the ownership will be low. So, I think he is just fine in tournaments, but that was obviously concerning in the matchup with, the matchup with the Heat obviously has a number of very adequate defenders where they can handle him fairly well. So,
would you go with Kevin Knox or Bojan Bogdanovic?
Yeah, someone was alluding to, yes, sorry, Tobias Harris is today's Blake Griffin. I was talking about him having played against Detroit, and I got my Miamis and my Detroits and my Pelicans twisted up for a minute there. What were you saying?
Kevin Knox or Bojan for Rinpack?
Yeah, because of the matchups, I'd go with Kevin Knox. I'm not thrilled with either of them. Kevin Knox, real issue with getting enough peripherals to hit a tournament upside for you, but Knox for me in that particular spot. With the acknowledgement that Bojan has had a couple decent games against the Raptors, but I don't think that's apropos of a lot. So Knox twice for me.
How are you handling Joel Embiid right now if you're on FanDuel?
I think he is still a very strong tournament play and risky as all get out. I think it's 70-30 he plays. If you're playing him, you need to be tolerant of the fact that you are accepting a massive risk that he just does not take the court. I think he plays. I have no knowledge that you don't, other than the fact to mention that I will guarantee you he has played many times recently when he was questionable to go and gone through treatment and all these other things during the game. So I think he gives it a go. They're not on a back-to-back or anything like that.
Would it be insane to run it back with Tim Hardaway at 5,900 in that Rockets next matchup?
No, it's not insane. It's still more than you want to pay at him at his current minutes role. They are really limiting the time that we are getting out of Tim Hardaway. The last couple games he hasn't seen 30 minutes in quite some time. But no, not completely insane to me. Given the last minute.
Bogdanovich or Gay for FanDuel?
Gay. Pretty significantly for me.
Drew and Miritich or Randall and Conley?
Drew and Meritage.
All right, we should be about to lock here. Those questions were from YouTube, by the way. So YouTube, feel special. You got a few in there as well.
Got some in there, YouTube. Way to go.
I just didn't mention where each one was coming from because I believe in a unified class, like Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. It's actually not true at all, but make a little political humor here, right, Eddie? Let's do a little daddy likes, huh?
Yeah, but that wasn't. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was a little socialism joke.
Socialism. You ever seen the movie Bulworth?
I've not. That's the Warren Beatty one, right?
Yes, you should go watch. You should go watch Bulworth if that manner of comedy is in your stripe. Sure, let's do a little quick daddy like. So let's see. Heading over to DK, 100K for that. Our 450K Wednesday shoot around. Again, I wouldn't think that naming contests would be that difficult, but let me ask you a question. What is a shoot around in a basketball game?
So I think this one is because it's a $12 one. So that's because in the shoot around, all 12 men are on the court at the same time, even though you have a roster of 15, I guess, probably.
That's a good answer. I hadn't considered that. That's a very maybe that is based on the entry fee. So that's I had no justification. That's good because for me, shoot around in basketball is this sort of casual thing you do before the game even starts. Whereas this is the largest tournament on the slate, so you think it would be called, I don't know, main event, buzzer beater, or something more climactic to do with the actual game. But that was a you have stunned me with your clever answer.
They love numbers puns on there. That's what I've noticed. The Big Jam though I can't figure out. That's their $10 one. I don't know what a Big Jam has. Oh, Big 10, perfect 10 dunk contest, Big Jam.
Yep, I was about to say.
There's a logic to everything they do.
Or it's the fact that a basketball hoop is 10 feet off the ground.
Ooh, could also be that. Or also because basketball players are known for being well endowed, and that's also why.
Unlike a good entendre. Shout out to Snow for his epic album. I believe it's called 12 Inches of Snow. For
AKA one Wednesday shoot around worth of snow.
Rappers, which is the rare triple entendre, being a description of a 12-inch record and meteorologically 12 inches of snow, and of course him being extremely well endowed. Pulled down me pants, looked up me bottom.
As all the white Rastafarians tend to be, white Rastafarian rappers.
Yep. Anyhow, ownership, most owned player on DraftKings out of this 7 o'clock game, Fred VanVleet, 14.1%. I am ambivalent. He's just fine. The matchup isn't great. That is lower ownership than we projected. Meh. Like I'm fully meh. I think the most likely conclusion is 30 minutes and 24 fantasy points. Meh. Would probably try to find I would rather play Dwayne Wade, for example. I'd be a much more fan of that play. Number 2, Serge Ibaka, 8.2%. I mean, I like him at that price. $5,900. Serge Ibaka is objectively way too cheap. Number 3, Pascal Siakam, 6.7%. So I said he'd be 40% less owned. That's only about 20% less owned. So yeah, I would have those being roughly comparable plays. Just a hair under that, Kyle Lowry at 6.5%. I like that quite a bit. He would have been my favorite of those 3. Next, Victor Oladipo, a hair under 5%. Okay, at 7,700, especially as a run back, assuming you have some of the aforementioned Raptors we just did 4 in a row of. Number 6 would be Domantas Sabonis at 3.1. I suppose I'm fine with that. It's been more Miles Turner time recently. I'd probably rather have gone there for not that much more. Bojan 2.8, sure. Miles Turner 2.4. I legitimately like that. Darren Collison 2.1. Yeah, the DK price is still tolerable for him, really, the only one of the sites, but he's been good recently. The minutes and the production have been there. Thad at 2%, no problem. CJ Kilometers at 1.6, that's fine. Danny Green 1.3. Boy's been shooting recently, I'll give him that. Tyreek Evans 1.1. I don't know about this whole fully healthy team Tyreek Evans of this year versus the Raptors, but good luck with that. 0.5 on Norman Powell. Again, matchup not ideal. Upside a little bit limited and would much rather FanDuel. 0.2 Corey Joseph, 0.16 Delon Wright, 0.05 Doug McDermott. Doug McDermott is never the answer. 0.03 Chris Boucher. Greg Monroe, 0.02. Kyle O'Quinn, 0.02. Kawhi Leonard, 0.02. Congratulations. You played yourself.
Boucher over Greg Monroe? I feel like that's unfair.
You're looking for the blowout, I guess.
Yeah,
I'd
I
rather play
guess.
Gregors though. Again, price agnostic. I assume there's some differential there.
Yeah. All right. Well, good for that. There's a little daddy likes for you. Only one early game going right now, but wish you guys the best of luck on that one. Make sure to use the promo code live before lock. We do have a lot of night slate content, including ownership projections, which will be coming up there. So use the promo code for 50% off of your first month. Applies to all
Marcin
the packages.
Gortat will start for the Clippers.
Oh,
There's
there we
your
go.
random
So yeah, now you can
701
load up
is
on Marcin
Montrezl
Gortat.
Harrell is not starting. I guess they like the whole Gortat Whiteside thing.
Harrell hasn't been that great starting either, to be honest.
Yeah, that's part of it. It's a little more bench punch for the team. I'm trying to remember exactly how they're rotating. I mean, with limited Lou, it makes a little more sense, and without Gallinari, so okay, I can see it.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right, well, there you go. So load up your Marcin Gortats accordingly. And yeah, make sure to use the promo code live before lock for 50% off of your first month. All the packages, including ones with Fantasy Cruncher. Go check them out now. Support Thrive Fantasy as well. I think they probably have some later tournaments as well if you want to get in there. They are the top site for prop bets, so go check them out. There's a link in the YouTube chat if you want to grab it. All right, Eddie, any parting thoughts before we call it quits on this fine hump day?
Nah, I think we're good. I'm off again tomorrow. It is another mediocre 4-game slate, but I think I'm on the remaining 8 days of the month or whatever. So last day of respite for me tomorrow, contractually required, and then I shall be with you for the duration, everyone. So thanks for stopping by.
All right, there you go. I will be on DK Live tomorrow, and you'll have solo Josh on here. So watch them both. Have a little double Chris and Josh party. Have multiple screens and watch them for my 10 seconds of talking on DK Live. But yeah, be back again soon. Wish you guys the best of luck. Have a great evening.